Hello and welcome to the Analytics Show, the podcast of business through the lens of data science. But together, we'll dive into learning and sharing where various industries are heading and how data and analytics is at the heart of shaping business growth and productivity. Let's spark different ways of thinking about data and analytics that is relevant to you and prepare your business for future disruption. I'm your host, Jason Tan. I'm delighted you could make it on this journey with us. Hey guys, to continue to get support tips, techniques, and tools and learn from the expert, hit that subscribe button wherever you are so we can keep in touch and continue our lifelong learning together. So, are you using your company data to its full potential? Take our embedded analytic assessment to find out your score. A leading organization like Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google have moved beyond dashboard and embedded data science directly into their daily business operation. With our 3-minute test, you will discover your potential in optimizing customer experience and revenue through embedded analytics. You will gain greater clarity, insight, and advice to embed analytics. Plus, you will receive customized results instantly. Find the link to this assessment in the description of this episode. Good morning, Emmanuel. Thank you so much for dialing all the way from Europe. I'm so excited to have you here today and talking about the range of topics related to AI. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Jason. I'm pretty good. Obviously, it's early here, but I'm really happy to be with you. So that's great. I'm just looking forward to this great discussion and addressing this I think amazing topic.
Well, I'm looking forward as well. Now, before we kickstart, I want to start by a bit of your background, and that's what I found from my research. I know that you served in the French Air Force for 27 years. Can you share a bit more about this experience?
Right, that was an amazing experience. I really enjoyed it. I actually joined, it was a long time ago, 1994, and I joined as a non-commissioned officer. At the very beginning, I was electrical engineer, something like that, right? And then I felt like I really wanted to do something else, and I sat for the examination to become an officer, joined the French Air Force Academy, and then I became a political science analyst, international relation analyst. I've been also a translator at some point, working with the chief of staff of the Air Force, and then I worked mostly as an instructor, a lecturer at the French Air Force Academy first, and then research associate in some places here in Paris. So I moved here and there around France. That was kind of really amazing. I've done things that are really crazy that you cannot do when you work in the civilian side, right? So that was really rich experience.
Any particular story from your time in the Air Force that has shaped the way that you see the world, or memorable?
Yes, certainly it has shaped my vision of the world, but also my career. When I actually was a cadet at the French Air Force Academy, I had this great professor. It was Professor Gourdin, Patrice Gourdin, and actually through him, I've discovered first international relations. That was my course in geopolitics with him. That was just great. And I also discovered the beauty of teaching, of being a professor. And from there, I've just thought, okay, at some point, what I want to become is this kind of person, professor, someone that is sharing, and mostly about political science, international relations, security studies, this kind of thing that are really fascinating to me. And yes, I actually, that was the starting point for me to resume my studies and do my master's and then my PhD and et cetera, and then start a new career outside of the military.
And I remember you were telling me that you came to visit Brisbane and stay here.
Yes.
For quite some time.
Yes.
Yes,
I've been honestly, I've been blessed to have this occasion to go to Brisbane. Actually, I was doing my master's degree in Sciences Po, the Political Studies Institute in Paris, right? And obviously, you have one semester that you can do outside of the university, so there are exchanges, and and actually everyone wanted to go to the US or to the UK, and there were those places open in Australia, the Griffith University and Queensland University. And then I said, okay, let's do that. Let's try that. So I just moved there with my wife and our son. He was really young at the time. And honestly, I'm not saying that because you're in Australia. I'm saying that from the bottom of my heart. It's been the best period ever in my life. I really love the country. I love the city. Brisbane is really great. I had the chance to travel around. And yeah, that was just a crazy time at the University of Queensland doing international relations with, figures like Richard Chapcott. That was just crazy. I really loved it.
I really have to give a blast to Brisbane. So in your world, why should people consider over Sydney or Melbourne but come to Brisbane instead? What has Brisbane has got to offer that was
I can't remember. It was a long time ago, right? And I didn't know about Australia. I didn't know about Brisbane. I didn't know about Melbourne. I didn't know where to go. So there was that choice, and looking like anyone, like any student looking on the internet, the pictures and the way of life. I felt like that first. I guess Brisbane is a bit more hot than Melbourne, and plus I really felt, and because I had the chance to go to Melbourne as well. Melbourne is much more European-like in the architecture than Brisbane is, right? So I felt like that's okay. Let's go Brisbane. Let's try it. And I do not regret it at all. That was just fantastic. I loved it.
I felt like Brisbane is a smaller version of Frankfurt. Is the way that I try to describe it to the Europe.
Yeah, we can say that at some point. Yes, to some extent. But no, that was we and even my wife and our son, we really enjoyed it. We were supposed to come back and maybe this summer and just to visit friends, and you have an amazing country, definitely.
Well, make sure you give me a yeah when you are in the country. Now,
Sure.
Moving on to talk about this interview. Before we start, share with us about your current role as the co-director and co-founder of the Global AI Ethics Institute.
Yes, it's something that I've been thinking for a while. I really wanted to switch to this part of research about ethics, and then with someone I didn't know him at the very beginning, Acom Momcilovic, a guy from Croatia, we just decided to create this new think tank because what we've discovered is actually that, and maybe we will have the occasion to discuss that later, but when you're talking about ethics applied to artificial intelligence, mostly the documents and the thoughts and everything is done by the West, right? Without any kind of consideration of other communities, other cultures. So we've decided that we should create something that might, gather some researchers and people that were willing to put on the table the fact that ethics is not only, the three main continental theories about Aristotle, Emmanuel Kant, and Jeremy Bentham, but that there were many other beautiful wisdoms and beliefs and philosophies that might be brought to the table just to enrich this discussion that we have about artificial intelligence and its risks, benefits and risks. Yes.
That reminded me one of the applications that we have built, which is a facial recognition application. One of the challenge that we actually were having is training the model. And when we were training the model, we have to go out and source a lot of photo to train the model and train the machine. And the biggest challenge, as you pointed out, was actually finding images that are available where we can use legally with the consent to train the model. And that was like the people from different demographic, people from different community, people from different country, and also female as well. I think we were having quite a lot of challenge in having
yes
to train the model.
Yes. That's the big question with what we call biases, right? And obviously data sets are mostly biased.
Exactly.
I mean, but that's, I mean, once again, that's something that we certainly touch upon later. But it's something that is kind of a big issue, but that might not be an issue everywhere, right? That might be an issue for us in the Western world to say, okay, we need this kind of, equity or equality between all those people from different skin colors, gender, orientation, sexual orientation, right? So when you're taking pictures of people, you need this kind of really wide spectrum of pictures representing the wide spectrum of people that you have in your country, right? So we need that. But in some places, that's not the point. People do not care about that. So this is the kind of thing that we're just trying to table, not to say that we are wrong, but just to say that we might not be always right about what we're doing. But that's really complex for many applications. We are facing these kind of difficulties. Obviously, facial recognition is one of them.
Exactly. Do you think, based on the research or various things that you have seen so far, is it possible to create an ethical AI that is diversity inclusion, given that the training data is, well, at least from my experience, is quite limited?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think so. To be totally honest, I don't think so for two reasons. First of all, because, and it's a matter of wording. Ethical AI is kind of a misleading sentence, right? Doesn't mean anything, right? AI cannot be ethical because AI is not autonomous enough to make its own decisions so far, to have intention, to have the same ability, for example, to cheat on you if it wants to do so. So when we're talking about ethical AI, people that are not in the field of AI mostly focus on the fact that technology might be ethical or not, while the point is that it's not about AI, because AI first is really wide thing, right? It's not this kind of singular thing. You have a lot of application, a lot of activities about AI. It's mostly about the fact that people that are developing, that are putting AI on the market, that are using on the market, have ethical behaviors or not, right? So this is the first thing. So, and the second thing is that even us as human beings, right? Let's think that AI is supposed to mimic our intellectual or cognitive abilities, right? That's kind of really reductive definition, but let's say that. The point is that even us, we are biased in our everyday relation to the world, right? And if the point is that's a philosophical question. Do we want something that mimics human beings, or do we want something that is better, meaning without biases? But the question is it always better not to have biases? Is it something that is desirable to have technologies that will mimic human beings without its weaknesses? Does that make sense? That's something that we want, right? Is my question? I'm not doing the promotion of any kind of biases or discrimination. That's not my point. My point is that the world, as we know it, works based on biases that might be about your mere appearance, not only about the fact that you're from China, that you're from Saudi Arabia, or that you're from Africa. That's not the point. The point is, it just might be your face. I might not like your face. I might not like the way you are clothed, right? I feel like we are all biased, and we don't want to accept it. So when we're trying to replicate human beings' intellectual or cognitive abilities, obviously, first, we are putting our own biases in the way we are programming those applications, right? And second, we cannot do something that might be totally different without biases, because in some places, let's say skin color discrimination might be a bias, and in other places that might not be. That might even be something that is really important for people, for their identity, right? For the sense of belonging to a specific community. When you go to Africa, I always give this example. When you go to Mali, people from South Mali consider themselves as Black people. But when they talk about people of North Mali that at the border with Algeria, they label them as white people. And they make this distinction because it allows them to say, okay, I'm in this community in the South, you are in this other community, right? So here discrimination is something that is important for identity purposes. And then you can find that in many places, in some other places, let's say China is really big, the way your face looks like will make a difference between people that are from East China and West China, right? And at some point, you can recognize people from this place and this place. And for some people, that make also the possibility to say, okay, I'm from the urban side, you're from the countryside. There is a difference between us. This is my identity. This is your. So we might disagree with that. and say we don't want that in France, in the UK, in Australia. Not the point. What we should not do is to say that's a general rule that is universal, not discriminate. That's not true. That's not true. You have places where discrimination is important. And even in the West, even when we pretend the contrary, actually we are discriminating all the time. And that's part of the human relation that we have with people. Right.
Yeah.
So the big point is just avoid to do harm with discrimination to us. But once again, that's something that might not apply universally. We have to apply it to the communities that are really focused or aware of this kind of problem.
I'm so glad that you highlight the people, the programmer, the data scientist is part of that equation. I think often people overlook just think that AI just happened by itself magically, but actually that these people who are involved and there are biases with there are inherent biases in all the people, right? Like it or not.
Sure.
So I'm so glad that you pointed out. But I'm just gonna get sidetracked here. One of the thing that sometimes that I have been thinking sometime is that I actually think that what makes us human intelligence is partly because of our weaknesses. Our weaknesses of biases, our weakness of jealousy, our weakness of envy or the happiness, all of those emotions that is making us human, whether it is stronger or weaker. That is what actually helped to create the intelligence. So it got me thinking perhaps the only real big breakthrough in the AI is to incorporate some of those human weaknesses.
Yes, yes, you're right. You're totally right. I think once again, it's a really highly philosophical question. Do we think that human beings are some kind of perfect as they are without their flaws and their abilities and these kind of things? I feel like yes, we are what we are, and would it be desirable to have something that might be really flat, not really interesting, that is always doing the same thing without any kind of emotions, without making any mistakes, without any flaws, without any weaknesses? I would say okay. I'm not sure that's the best way to go there. Once again, I don't hold any kind of truth. The point is that we don't even debate on that, right? There is no discussion about what kind of AI do we want. We just, for most people that are working in the field of AI, what they think is that they have to embed their values into the AI system that they're working on, right? And they do not consider the whole picture, saying, okay, I'm not alone on Earth. There are many communities, people that will be impacted, and what, because this is the question that we always skip, is what kind of society do we want for the future? Where do we want to go with this AI? Okay, what's the limits? What are the limits of that, right? We never ask this kind of question. We're just following up, chasing up, technology, and we're creating something and trying to, counter the bad effect of technology, like environments, right? We kill environment all the time, and at some point you feel, oh, okay, the ozone layer is totally collapsed. We have to, and then you have to repair, you have to fix what you've done earlier, and fixing what you've done, you have to find something because you're creating new problems, right? So we are always chasing the clouds. We'd never take the time to ask ourselves the question, okay, where are we going? What are we doing exactly? Okay, what is the horizon that we want to reach, right? And that's the big issue. And I think that the horizon that we want to reach for some people is really idealistic, creating this kind of new generation of cyborgs or artificial intelligence that might be freed from any kind of weaknesses and flaws. I think that's not only idealistic, it's also naive, because we will never be able to do that.
True. Now, on the note of how people may consciously or unconsciously embed their own value into the system that they design and develop, what are the things that we can do to expand on that, or to make it more diversity, in order to avoid some of the value?
It's a good question. The first thing that we really, I want to repeat it once again, is that it's really misleading to talk about AI. AI doesn't mean anything. First, that there is this philosophical question: does AI really exist? Okay, first question. Second, when we're talking about AI and embedding values in AI, doesn't mean anything, because you might embed values in a specific AI system for a specific purpose at a specific time in a specific place, right? Let's say, for example, that you feel like transparency, because this is the kind of thing that we hear in Europe, that transparency about the data sets and the processes is something that is really valued. Okay, yeah, let's talk about defense industry. I don't think that transparency is something that is valued in the defense industry. I don't think that for political purposes, strategic purposes, it's really something desirable to have transparent algorithm or artificial intelligence system in the military. You don't want to be transparent, right? So it's really contextual. So it depends on what kind of system you're developing, for what purpose, by whom, etc., right? So embedding values in AI, that is just not possible. Right, that is not possible. Look at New Zealand, right? It's a neighboring country to Australia, obviously, and they worked on their data codes of ethics, right? They included the Maori culture into it, right? That would not make any sense to us in France. So maybe the people in New Zealand, when they will develop AI system or AI technologies, they will embed this kind of vision of the world, of wisdom from the Maori people, right? But you cannot just take that and copy paste it for the French guys, and then for for Australia maybe at some point, or even for Africa, right? So you cannot embed your values. If you do that, what you're doing is you're denying the diversity of values. You're denying the diversity of perspective, and at some point, even without bad intention, without even being aware of it, you're doing what I call cultural tyranny, right? You are imposing your views, your values, just because you're so focused on it, because you're so deeply convinced that those values are universal and that they are worth being defended. Then you deny the right to others to have a different perspective, right? And that's the issue. But to answer clearly your question, no, I don't feel like that's something possible to. You can, once again, maybe embed your own values in a very specific system at a specific time for a very specific purpose. Let's say that you have France, you will have the Olympic in 2024. Now, let's say that you want to have this non-discrimination or privacy thing that be embedded in all the systems that are used for security, CCTVs, etc., that will be used for the Olympics. Okay, let's do that. You can do that, right? But you cannot say that all CCTV system fitted with AI should have those values, right? That doesn't make sense, right? Because every context might be different.
At a general or high level, would you say to have a diverse AI ethic is a way to counter this sort of issue?
I think that there is a lack of discussion. There is a lack of consideration for a lot of other ethical perspective. There is also a lack of reflection on that. For example, I've worked with China a lot. There is not that much reflection about what we call AI ethics or ethics applied to artificial intelligence. That's not the point, right? That's not the focus of Chinese people that are working on the field. If you go to Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, exactly the same. They're not really concerned about that. So obviously they cannot provide their own thoughts. So you see here and there some people that have been raised or that have studied in the Western world saying, okay, maybe with my own culture, let's say the Muslim culture, I can bring something new. And you have people like Emmanuel R from Pakistan. She studied in Australia, and she wrote this really fantastic book about the Islamic perspective on ethics of technology. But anyway, there's a lack of debate. The point, my perspective, and obviously that's something that's disputable, is that mostly we are so convinced that we hold the truth about what is acceptable and what is not when it comes to technology and lots of things around, that we do not even think, or we are not even aware that there might be different ideas. So we are not asking to others, right? And when you have people that are coming to the table saying, okay, look, I do not agree with you. Let's say discrimination. I don't agree with that because I feel like we must discriminate between females and males, right? In some countries, in some cultures, right? Then you feel like, oh, we felt hurt, and we say, no, that's totally unacceptable. And we don't even try to discuss that. We do not try to listen. We do not try to understand what is the process through which those people went to end up at this conclusion, right? And maybe we might even I mean, instead of just trying to bring them on our side of the bridge, we might meet in the middle of the bridge if we'd be able to listen. But we don't do that, and I think that there is a lack of political will. There is a lack of, will, generally speaking, in all the stakeholders that are involved in AI technologies, and I think that's a pity, definitely.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from, especially how to create a bridge where it connects different political belief and different community. I think that seems to be lack of conversation in that area.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And AI is not the only field, right? I've taught and I've done political science, international relations.
Exactly.
You can find tons of examples where actually the West mostly is trying to impose its own perspective. Let's talk about democracy, right? We try to export democracy to Afghanistan without thinking that, okay, Afghanistan is not organized the same way, does not have the same culture, right? And then after 20 years, we thought, okay, that was not a good idea, and then we withdrew. And we left Afghanistan even worse than it was before, right? So this is all about us, our conviction that we have, that we hold truth in the West, and because especially in France, we went through the Enlightenment, so we have these philosophical ideas, and we all feel like that. Okay, we just, we're just the heirs of this Enlightenment, which is not the case, and then we just provide to the world. That's not the way it works. Definitely not. And when you look at the history of philosophy started in Asia, right? But no one knows about that. No one knows about, the Vedic perspective, the Buddhist perspective, the Confucian perspective. No one takes care about that. And once again, it's a shame.
Hey all, I just want to give a quick shout out about this episode. It's sponsored by the Embedded Analytic Program at DDA. And the Embedded Analytic Program is designed for senior manager and executive in the business team who want to integrate data science into daily business operation and use it to drive customer experience excellence and revenue. And book unlimited strategy session for a full year and start embedding analytics into the business frontline. For more information about this program, please refer to the description of this episode. Now, let's get on back to the interview. Now, I'm going to get a little bit sidetracked here, considering that you have been traveling around the world and you have that political science background, and given of what you just shared, in your personal view, how do you think all these different beliefs in different culture could potentially come together where harmony is possible? How do you think that is possible at all? That whole
No, I don't think it's possible, because you get people that have perspectives that are totally opposed, right? And at some point you will not reconcile them. You will not find any kind of compromise on some really important point. That, for example, once again, let's talk about discrimination between males and females. In some places, it's something that is not subject to any kind of compromise. People will discriminate between males and females. But on the other hand, you have people like us in the West or in Australia that would say that's totally unacceptable. So we'll not compromise on that, right? So we will have really two strong stances, and we will polarize the problem. So we will not be able. But even more, I'm asking the question: is it something that is desirable? Because if at some point we are able to, or if we are fighting or struggling to find this kind of compromise, wouldn't that mean that at some point we've just, once again, denied the right to some people to have a totally different perspective? Do we really want, like having all the same values, do we really want the world to be that, once again, that flat, that uninteresting, just because we all think the same, we all believe in the same things, we all have the same values? No, that's not the world we live in. When I'm traveling in Australia, when I'm traveling, I'm doing, for example, talks in Israel, when I'm doing talks in the US or in Croatia or in other places, right? What I like is meeting with people that have a different mindset. I like that. Right. Sometimes I don't like people in some places because they are not smiling at me, they're not cheering at me. Yes, okay, that's great. So sometimes I might criticize those people, like people that are coming to France might criticize France, no problem, in the French. But this is the beauty of traveling and discovering other. If I go to China and I find exactly the same people there, In France, I would say, okay, what's the point about traveling to China, right? Except maybe architecture. But if we think the same, within 10, 20, 30, 40 years, we'll have the same building in China than we have in France, or then we have in Australia, or then we have in Congo, Brazil, right? I feel like, okay, what's the point about that? Do we want to all of us look the same, think the same? I'm not sure about that, right? So it's always a matter of compromises on a specific system at a specific moment in a specific place for a specific purpose, right? Each time we try to generalize the things and try to make them universal without taking account this wide spectrum of possibilities, then we are denying the right to some people to express their own perspective, right? So instead of doing what we're doing in France or in Europe, in the Western world, trying to say, okay, we have universal values, let's spread them out to the world. We have to say, okay, I'm developing this tool in France for those people for this purpose. What can I do with that? And maybe someone will develop exactly the same app in another cultural setting, and maybe they will have a totally different perspective. And maybe they will develop it with different values embedded in it, right? So, and this is what I call tolerance.
Yes.
People would say that I'm a relativist, and this mostly it's used as something that is a word to ostracize me and say, look, you're a really bad guy because you accept everything. It's not that I'm accepting everything. There are things that I do not accept as an individual, but I will not go in another community and tell them what is good for them and what is right for them. That's not my point, because I don't want them to come to my place and tell me, okay, you should do this or you shouldn't do that, right? I don't want to be lectured by others, so I will not lecture others. That's the point. But I might disagree with something that with discrimination, I disagree with that in my country, but I understand that in some other cultural setting, that might be something important. Okay, yeah. So this is where we are. But for most of us, this kind of dichotomy in your brain, right? It's really difficult to say, okay, I have values, but I have to accept that those values are not shared. It's a tough compromise that you have to do with yourself first.
Indeed. Thank you so much for sharing your personal view on that topic. Coming back to the topic of the AI ethical AI discussion, what are some of the most pressing ethical issues facing AI today, in your view?
I would definitely say that there are two of them. The first one is related to what I've just said, is universalism. The universalist tropism from the West is kind of really dangerous to me, really, and it's something that we have to fight against. We have to make sure that people that are working in the field of AI are aware of the fact that there is no such thing as universal values, right? There might be values that are shared by majority of communities all around the world, and that might be true, but there is no evidence that there is any kind of value that is shared universally per se. I mean, really universally by everyone in the whole world, right? So universalism is really dangerous, because for some of people, once again, it's a Trojan horse for the West, just to spread its own values. And when I'm discussing with people, for example, in India, when I'm discussing with people in Saudi, I will be in Saudi Arabia in February. Some of them feel like they're hurt, because they feel like, okay, you're just trying to impose us your vision of the world, and we do not share the same vision, right? So that's something. And the second one, and it's a bit more cynical, it's human stupidity, right? The higher we have the higher the abilities of AI is, the lower the intellectual abilities of human beings are, right? You've heard about ChatGPT, right? So we are creating lots of things that are doing things for us, and when you're doing that, at some point, when you're just switching off your brain, right? So the more AI will be intelligent, the more we will be stupid, and the more the gap is big, and the more it's concerning, right? And I feel when we're talking about artificial intelligence, it's like talking about human intelligence. I don't feel like we are all intelligent, first, at the same level, second, and third, I don't even know if human beings are intelligent. Look at us in the West. In the West, how we destroy the planet and all the stupid things we were doing. We're waging wars here and there. So I don't feel like that's intelligence. And plus, if we go deeper into that, I don't even know what intelligence means, right? There is no clear definition. There is no definition that we all agree on about definition about intelligence. You have people like Howard Gardner that defines 10 kinds of intelligence. Most people would say it's just about the IQ. We don't know what human intelligence is. And when I'm discussing with people around me, I don't feel like myself I'm intelligent. I maybe have some capacities that others do not have. Doesn't mean that I'm intelligent in my everyday life. I do lots of things that are totally stupid, right? So, the most pressing issues, basically universalism, that we have to be really aware of and fight against, and human stupidity, because we're lazy, and especially in the West. And sometimes we're just putting our brain and we're just trying not to download or upload our ability in a machine. We're just leaving to the machine the right to do whatever they want because we felt like, okay, they're more intelligent than us. But
on the note of the universalism, how do you think the lack of the diversity in the field of AI development could potentially lead to biased algorithm and decision making?
Basically the point is that once again, if you let's start from facts, right? Around 70% of all the documents that are related to AI ethics have been set and published by the West. 70%, right? While the West represents, if you take West at large, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and Northern America, represent barely 12% of humanity, right? So, and within those 12% of humanity, you only have a handful of people that are working in AI. We are not all working in AI, right? So you have a handful of people that are deciding what is acceptable, what is not acceptable for the rest of the world. Those people, they do not have a full knowledge of the existing possibilities. So whatever they think about it, intentionally or non-intentionally, they are rejecting some perspective. So they are putting their biases, right? In the West, if I do think that, for example, that data privacy is something that is really important, I will just support that, promote that, and work on that, and create my codes, which is the case for the European Union, saying, okay, we have to respect data privacy, right? But you have people like Soraj and Gladderom, a Thai philosopher, and is just bringing to the table, okay, look, the Buddhist perspective is totally different. Privacy does not mean the same thing for Buddhist people. Like that would be exactly the same for people in the Hinduist religion or the Hinduist wisdom. They do not think about privacy like you think about privacy, right? It's mostly by ignorance that people are not putting that into or taking that into account, right? So obviously it is biased because you will impose to Buddhist person a perspective that is not theirs and they do not agree with, right? When you're talking about CCTV, for example, we are just fearing CCTV, saying, okay, it will violate our privacy and this kind of thing. Go to Japan. Japanese people in the street, I mean, not scholars that have been raised in Europe, they're really happy with that because they have this feeling of security that is provided by CCTV, right?
Yeah.
And we're criticizing China about CCTV, but you have much more CCTV per person in the US than in China, right? So this is this schizophrenic situation that we are in, where we, by ignorance of the complexity of the reality of the world, we are making things really simple, but at the very end, very superficial analysis of what it is to embed ethics into artificial intelligence system, right? So there is this lack of knowledge. Sometimes there is a lack of will to take that into account because it's not in the interest of all stakeholders, right, private and public. So that's the complexity of it.
You mentioned that the 70% of the AI research comes from the West, and that just got me to think that I think the other majority of the AI research probably would come from China and Japan.
Oh,
but
no, yeah.
Sorry.
No. I mean that's not even the case. Not even the case. If you look at China, I think that China might represent something like 70% of humanity itself, right? Like India, right? If you look at how many papers or documents related to AI ethics China has published, that's nothing compared to what the European and when I'm talking about the West, when you really look once again deeper into the picture, what you see is that mostly it's the US, the UK, and France, let's say, in the European Union, right? It's not even all the Western world. It's not Australia. It's not New Zealand, right? It's small part. So that's really reduced, right? And most of they are the documents. They have been published by international organizations. So the argument is, look, for example, the UNESCO has said its own, codes of ethics, and would say, okay, UNESCO represents the world. Not really. When you do political science and you know how diplomacy works, you know that when you're a small country, you don't have the power of big countries, right? And you know that even at the UNESCO, the diplomatic exercise make the fact that actually the West is still prominent in the decision-making processes.
Absolutely. What I was hoping to get your view is that I think the research in AI and or AI ethic probably come from a lot of the West country that you just mentioned. In the East, I can imagine the research in the AI would come from China or Japan or Korea. But what I was going to say though is that it still, despite having those three countries from Asia, it still doesn't necessarily is the real representative of the Asia alone, because about 500 million population from Southeast Asia, 1.3 billion from South Asia, and then another few hundred million from the Middle East. So that is still a massive gap from this region. What are the things that we can potentially have this inclusion of this country where understandably, economically, and technologically are not as advanced, but is it possible for us to consider to be a bit more inclusion?
Yes, I think that might come from big international organizations such as the UN, right? The UN might maybe create some kind of organization within the UN that would make sure that diversity is respected, right? And then maybe you can go to Singapore, and maybe Singapore would say, okay, we don't care about that, do whatever you want. Okay, and then you can do whatever you want, right? But even if there is only one person in Singapore that wants to be heard about his or her perspective, then you have to include them, right? But if you just expect countries to do that, they will never do that, because they have so much interest in not doing it that they will not do it, right? So if it does not come from a big, once again, international organizations such as the UN and the UNESCO would be if they were less biased themselves, that would be something that they might do, right? Just make sure that everyone has been heard at his or her level, not just listening to Liechtenstein as a really small country and listening at the US at the big country. Okay, so let's focus on the US. No, Liechtenstein has a specific perspective. Take it. Okay, listen to it, right? Try to understand what it can bring to the debate, right? You want to go to Singapore, go to Singapore. You want to go to Malaysia, ask Malaysia, right? You want to go to Congo, Brazzaville, to Mali, to Algeria, go to them, ask them, right? Ask them, right? But it's there is a need for a strong political will, and it's also a lot of energy. And one of other big issues that we have is that it takes time. And actually, lots of stakeholders that are involved in the development of artificial intelligence system, they don't want to waste time, because there is big money behind it, right? So you have to go fast. You have to go faster than the opponent. You have to go faster than the competitors, right? So you cannot take time discussing or deliberating about what is acceptable in Malaysia, what is acceptable in Congo Brazzaville, what is acceptable in Belgium. We don't. So you go fast, and it's easier to say, okay, let's do this and just accept those values that we're giving to you because we're really great countries, right? And then accept it because they're universal. So once again, if it doesn't come from a big international organization with a strong will to say diversity, like it is written in the Declaration on Universal Diversity that has been issued by the UNESCO in 2001. Sorry, if we do not respect diversity, if there is no one that would put that on the table, then nothing will be done.
Absolutely. I think the last 2 years we have seen a rise of application that is sitting on top of all the AI model. So ChatGPT is obviously making all the news around the world. But I think the other one that is worth mentioning is the image generator by the AI. And at the same time, there was a lot of discussion about how it is perpetuating stereotype because it is taking the information from the white internet. As much as what we like to think that internet is diverse, I
Sure.
think because of the population of the people using the internet, there is still lack of
Right.
diversity. How
Right.
how can we avoid this thing in the future?
The first one is first thing is, do we really want to avoid that? And second, I think you cannot avoid that, but because it shows us something that is really important. Once again, from the Western perspective, what we're saying is that we have universal values. AI is spreading all around the world. Everyone is
Yeah.
connected at some point, which is not the case. That's why we don't have some data about, for example, African people or Asian people, because they're not connected to the internet, because they do not care about that, right? We in the West are massively using those networks, social networks, and we are providing the net with a massive amount of data every day because we are connected, because we are highly dependent to technology. You have communities around the world that are not even aware that AI exists, right? So once again, it's a biased perspective to say that everyone in the world is connected to AI, will be impacted by AI. That is definitely not true. Even in my country, in France, you have places or locations that are, a remote location in some countryside parts of France where people do not even have access to 4G. So what about AI? They don't even know that AI exists, right? So the point is that we have to accept that there are some communities in the world from which we will not get data because they will not be connected to the technology, because they don't care about technology. If you go to South America, you have people, you have small communities that are living, in Ottersea in the Amazon forest. They don't care about AI. They don't want access to AI. They don't want access to technology. So the point is that we will not be able to have a fully unbiased technology. Plus, the point is that those people that are programming those AI systems, they are biased themselves, so they're embedding their own bias in the system. So it just, once again, for a specific tool at a specific moment in a specific place for a specific purpose, then you can do that, right? As soon as you try to make it general and say, okay, we have to do that for all AI, then you're wrong. Either you're lying or you're naive, right? So that's not the way it works. So it's something impossible. And everyone that is coming to you saying, okay, we can do that, once again, just ring a bell and okay, that's weird.
Now, taking on all the research that we have seen and the experience, and summarize what we have just discussed, what advice would you give to individual or organization just starting to think about the ethical implication of their AI system and perhaps how they can promote the diversity in the field?
I would say first, be curious and do not believe that you hold any kind of truth and that you know. Do not say that you know, because you never know, right? So be curious, be open-minded. You might, myself, I have discussion with people that I do not agree with, and people that are saying things that might hurt me. But the point is about listening, right? Learn how to listen to others, right? You might disagree with them, but let's try to have a discussion, even if you totally disagree, right? Because that's the beauty of the discussion. Then it's at some point you will raise some kind of new ideas, some new perspective, and then you feel like, oh wow, that's great. We found maybe a superficial or weak compromise, but we found a compromise on that. Or maybe we can agree that we disagree. That's the point, right? But at least you will have understood why those people are thinking the way they think and what they're making this decision that they've made, right? And the same way on the other side. So listening is key. And I would tell them, okay, just try also to dive into ethics for real. Do not do what I call cosmetics, which is just hiding, the ugliness of the world behind the veil of makeup. Just about, okay, just ethics is complex. I have lots of books behind me. Get a lot of ethical thinking or moral thinking by obviously Western philosophers. We have a lot of things that are coming from, this is philosophie d'ailleurs, this philosophy from elsewhere. So you get a lot of philosophy, a lot of wisdoms, a lot of ideas that are coming from all around the world. So once again, be curious, try to dive into it and try to understand what ethics is about, right? Just try to understand what are the the grounds of ethics for real. Do not just take principles and try to apply them. That's not ethics at all. Okay, that's conformism to rules. But yeah, so I would tell them, yeah, be open-minded, learn to listen, and learn about ethics. That would be the three things.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that I can I can give you a plug, or you would like to share about your work?
Oh yeah, but my work, I would say yes. With the Global AI Ethics Institute, we're just trying to promote this idea. We're just trying to promote this idea of the diversity, of discussion, or of inclusion, of once again of debate, a real debate with people that do not agree with, but that respect each other and that respect each other's stance, which is really important. So we're trying to do that, and obviously we're welcoming anyone that wants to join and to be part of the discussion, or to bring new ideas or even illustration. And you don't have to be a philosopher, you don't have to be an ethicist. We get a lot of people, 25 countries represented in the Institute now, and we have people from really different backgrounds. We have people that are really tech guys, engineers. We have ladies that are working in the field of human sciences that are not ethics, that might be linguistic, for example. Anyway, even if you're just a mere citizen and you feel like, okay, you have something to say, it's always important to have this kind of discussion with everyone, to have the feedback, to have the feelings of the people that are in the real life. Because sometimes us in the academic world, we lose sight of the reality of the world. So this is what we're trying to do with the Global AI Ethics Institute, just trying to spread the word about the fact that diversity is a wealth and not a risk.
For anyone who wants to join, what is the best way for them to get in touch?
Oh, you can just Google my name, Emmanuel Goffi, and or the Global AI Ethics Institute. Send me an email. You will find my email, and we'll just have discussion. I have tons of discussion every day about people that are interested in what we're doing, and some of them are joining, some of them are not joining, but we keep in contact and we're creating links. And when I have a question about, for example, specific culture that I'm not really aware of, because I'm not specialized in every culture, obviously, I know that I just have to contact someone on LinkedIn. You can contact me on LinkedIn. Mostly that's the way it works. We're contacting people through LinkedIn. But then I know that I can ask you, okay, say, oh, you're in Australia. I just have some question to ask you about this and that. And then if you don't know, you will just give me the contact of someone that might help me, etc. So that's the way it works. And then I will have, that's really important. I will have a real sense of what real people in the street in Australia or in China or in Congo Brazzaville think about that. Not the perspective of the government, not the perspective of academic institution, not the perspective of educated people, but the perspective of people that are living their everyday life under, for example, the surveillance of CCTV. We need their feedback.
Absolutely.
So LinkedIn, sorry, the website or an email, that would be great.
I will make sure to include the link of the website and email, and also your LinkedIn profile.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you.
Here are some of the questions that I typically have my guests to close the interview. First question is, what is your most important first principle?
I avoid having principles because I know that they might change, but I mean, the one that I really cherish is open-mindedness. I can listen to anything without value judgment, right? I might have my own opinion, but I can listen to almost everything so far. And I think that open-mindedness is one of my strengths as well, because it makes me think about the world in a very complex way, and it helps me to make inferences when I'm thinking about things. I say, okay, yeah, I've heard this and that, and how can I use it, etc. So open-mindedness, definitely, yes. Yeah.
I can tell from our conversation. What is one book that you have read and thought it would have been better for your younger self to have?
I'm obviously I'm a philosopher. I like philosophy. I like the Stoic philosophy. So I would have been given the Epictetus handbook, the Enchiridion. Enchiridion. It's a handbook that has been written by Epictetus, right? And is the imperial part of Stoicism. And Epictetus, that's really interesting. You have Epictetus, you have Seneca, you have Marcus Aurelius, and those philosophers, they brought something that is really interesting about, okay, let's be stoic, facing things that we do not have control over, right? and it helps us. And when you're young, that's really important. And it's still something that is helping me in my everyday life, is that there are things that are worth focusing on and wasting time on, and there are things that are not worth it, right? So there are things that you have control over and things you don't have control over. So focus on things that you have control over, that are worth being controlled, right? And get rid of all the other things, right? And when you do that, at some point, it's really relieving for your mental health, right? And it's really, and obviously when I say that, sounds maybe even stupid or obvious, but if you read the manual, what they call the handbook by Epictetus, it's really short one, really easily accessible. You don't have to be a philosopher to read it. Then you discover a world full of possibility, and then you feel, okay, I'm wasting time, focusing on things that are maybe stressing me, that are a source of anxiety, and then I can get rid of them because what I'm doing is pointless, right? I'm focusing on things that are not worth it once again. So, yeah, the what we call in the Enchiridion, or the Handbook of Epictetus, is the book.
I will make sure to check out that book. Now, if that is one person that you want to listen on the Analytic Show podcast, who would that be?
Maybe someone I've heard about. I've heard and I've read the book. That would be Luc Julia. Is one of the co-founder of Siri. Luc Julia. He's a French guy. He worked for now. He's working now for Renault, for the French car company, right? And he has a really interesting perspective about the fact, and he's written this book. I think it has been translated into English, which is, there is no such thing as artificial intelligence. Right, and the title itself is like kind of intriguing. I say, like, oh, what does that mean exactly? And especially when it comes from someone that actually worked in the field, and especially in autonomous vehicles, right? And I've heard him. I was giving a talk in Serbia quite recently, and he was there, and he also presented something, and that was his presentation.
Wow!
And I felt like that was really refreshing, because it's a different perspective. We're all talking about AI like it's something real, that it exists, and is just here destroying all that, saying, okay, that does not exist. There is no such thing as artificial intelligence. So yeah, and this is really great, and it's really good when he's talking. It's it's really rigorous. It's a serious demonstration. It's not just to make the buzz. It's something that is really serious, right? And it gives you some kind of new approach of artificial intelligence.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Emmanuel.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you to you.
Your view and the discussion about the AI ethics. It certainly have opened my eyes and my ears about this topic. Once again, thank you so much.
Thanks to you. That was a real pleasure, definitely.
Hello. If you enjoyed this conversation, hit that subscribe button so we can meet again. If you don't, I'll be stuck in an infinite loop. So pull that part by clicking the subscribe and help me out. You can further support us by leaving us a kind review from wherever you are listening. At the end of the year, I will choose a reviewer to send a special gift to, and it might just be you. Look forward to seeing you here next week for a new adventure, if I can find my way out of this endless loop. See ya! Welcome.